All right, we are live. We're starting up. We're live. We want to give people a few moments to get on as we're starting our stream for our Wednesday Word Bible study. We have our special guest, and we're going to officially introduce him later. But it's former Cleveland Brown cornerback Ben Davis, and we're glad to have him on. And this is all going to tie in with our Black History Month because we're trying to give honor to Black history. And then also we're dealing with trauma. We've been talking about trauma and dealing with COVID, being shut up or, life wearing masks all the time, dealing with issues and how do we handle trauma? And then ties into the theme of victory. That's a lot going on, I know. But for Lent season, we're looking at victory. So it ties into our victory because we're talking about how to get through trauma and dealing with the healing, forgiveness, and all those things. So Evangelist Hill has been with us for the past few weeks. She couldn't be here tonight due to schedule things, but we are so fortunate to have Ben Davis with us.
Yes.
And he's going to be able to, we're going to dive into his life a little bit. We're going to play reporter, anchor, so forth, and talk about his great life.
And still uplift the Lord.
Yes, without a doubt, uplift the Lord. Yes, definitely.
Praise the Lord, Evangelist Ellis.
Yes, praise the Lord, Evangelist Ellis. She's on. We have a few others on. As they are getting on, we're going to start off with our nothing talk. And with that, we're going to look at some events that happened in the news. And basically, we're talking about Herschel Walker. And Herschel Walker talked to, was it the House Committee?
Yes.
The House Committee about reparations. And interestingly enough, we're going to have Willie D from the Ghetto Boys. Now, he's not live, but we're going to have a bite from him in regards to reparations. Jeff Corner, hello. Sister Letisa, hello. Good to see you. Now, here's the thing. I never really thought I would be pulling words from Willie D in Bible study, but we're going to hear from him. No, but he has some interest. I mean, because he deals with
I was glad he said what he said. Yes.
So it's interesting. But I don't have that exact bite that
that's right, Candy.
Before, but I do have another bite from it. Now, let me say this too. The video that I'm going to show from Herschel Walker and Willie D, I chopped it up. I edited it. So it's not the full version, but I did put the links in the description and you can go to the links. Also, the one I got from Willie D, there's another guy commentating over it. You hear him just a little bit, but I couldn't find like the original for some reason, but I found what I could. I gave everybody the courtesy credit that they needed. So I don't want anybody to try to sue me. It's all legal. I'm sending everybody your website. Leave me alone. All right. Did you have anything you want to say before we go on to that?
I think you've said a lot.
So I did say a lot. Well, I want to get to Ben Davis, so I'm rushing a little bit. I want to get to Ben Davis. We're thankful to have him. We flew him in from California. No, we didn't. He's in California, and he's enjoying some. Let me say this real quick. I called him and made contact, and he was on the golf course.
Jealous.
He was living it up on the golf course. But now let me say this.
And we thank God for my dad. My dad.
But I'm saying he is in retirement, so we pray we all get there and enjoy.
And move to California.
Your dad was, yes.
Yes, thank you to my dad who he and Mr. Davis are friends, so we were able to make that connection.
Well, I want to say too, that's a great bunch of friends there where you have Al Jenkins, you have him and that group of football players and just friends. Rudy, wasn't it? Yeah, Rudy.
Rudy didn't play football, though.
No, he didn't. I'm talking about Rudy's in that group.
Right.
But just all of those guys that were and women that were together.
Right.
Good group. All right. So we're going to get to our video, and I want you to just listen in. Once again, we got this in regards to reparations. All right. And this is.
Does everyone know what reparations are?
Well, go ahead.
So I just want to say,
teacher.
No. I just want to make sure. I just so initially, it was stated that post-slavery, that reparations were going to be given. It was going to be 40 acres and a mule. And
those were the talks. They never made it official,
right?
But yes.
And so other people have received reparations. I know the Japanese have received reparations here. in the United States for some atrocities that were done to them. Even some Civil War families who had experienced loss. And I don't know the details of that, but in 2020, the last person who was receiving money from their family member being a part of the Civil War just stopped getting funding. And so reparations have been paid to others. We are the only group that I know of that hasn't received those reparations.
And reparations are amends to
the atrocities
say, like we're sorry for what happened, and here's basically some payment
to
try to, it doesn't take away from it, but try to make up for it or give you. But here was the thing though too, when you look at slavery, I can't imagine all those people that were set free, but they weren't set up to do anything.
No, but they became indentured servants. Yeah,
they weren't set up to do anything for that. But many accomplishments have been made.
Absolutely.
And many breakthroughs have taken place. I'm just saying in the beginning, it had to be really hard. And then I just want to say this briefly too. And then, there also is the mindset. And we see this a little bit with Herschel Walker. We're like, hey, that happened years ago. It's no big deal. But we're still dealing with the redlining that went on. You still had discrimination that's going on. It was Wells Fargo that paid out, it was how many millions of dollars? They paid out $7.8 million because they were discriminating against African Americans and women. So this was in dealing with jobs.
And let's add in what you've been talking about with trauma. There is a legitimate condition called racial trauma.
Right.
And if you think about the again, I keep using this word because it really is the atrocities that have been put forth towards African Americans, and it has continued. It hasn't really stopped. It just comes in a different form at a different time. And so, we're still dealing with a lot of those things that we have had to deal with.
Get off the floor. I'm sorry. I told you I'm going to do this like we were in church. I told you I don't want you on the floor playing with the dog because the dog is going to go berserk. So anyway, and looking at, see, we were in church. That's when you'd be like, boy, sit down. And then you go to preaching. But anyway, but what I want to say with that too is that when we look at everything that's happening, I don't care if Joe Blow is racist. I care about the people who are in position to give you jobs,
systemic racism,
and to give you loans and all those other things. If they are racist, because then that's going to really affect me.
Absolutely.
If my neighbor's racist, you don't have to speak to me. I can make it through. I'll
Couldn't
still
care
say
less.
hi to you.
I'll
still say hi. Let's not forget the Christian.
Oh no, you know who I wave to. I wave to the neighbors, and I know they don't want me waving. So, how you doing?
All right, let's get to Herschel Walker. Then we're going to get to our friend Ben Davis. So here we go.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak on reparation. I asked the question why. There's been many surveys show that a large percentage of Black and white teens would say racism is better today than yesterday. We use Black power to create white guilt. My approach is biblical. How can I ask my Heavenly Father to forgive me if I can't forgive my brother? I never want to put anyone's religion down, but my religion teaches togetherness. Reparation teaches separation. Reparation, where would the money come from?
The stimulus package is proof positive that they could pay reparations if they wanted to.
If they wanted to. Come on with it.
The bottom line is that they don't want to. They feel justified in what America did to Black people. America is cool with everybody else receiving reparations. They're cool with the Jews receiving reparations for what they went through, the Japanese receiving reparations for what they went through, the Native Americans.
So let me say this now. When you heard the voice on there once again, that's not me. That was the site I got it from, and you'll see it. Now, I'm not super promoting these sites. Willie D, if you know anything about him, he's a rapper that can use some choice language at times, but I just wanted to pull out some of what he said. And we're going to bring in Ben Davis so I don't keep him in the dark too long. Hello, Ben Davis. How are you? Oh, I know why. Oh, that's my fault. Let me unmute you. Now let me hear you say it again. I'm sorry.
Bill and Lisa, how are you?
We are well,
We're
sir.
great. We're
Thank
great.
you. Thank you.
I talked to you briefly about Herschel Walker, And I didn't realize, as we talked about him and his relationship with Trump, that he used to play for Trump's team.
Trump had a team?
Yes, Trump had a football team. I think it was the World Football League or one of those offsets from the NFL. And he is a New York Stars, I believe, and Herschel Walker went to play for him years ago and got big money. And as you can see, Trump took care of Herschel right on up to right now. So
right.
I think we can anticipate that Herschel is going to have those conservative views.
Right.
So, no
As does his son.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Should we introduce Mr. Davis one more time, just for some people who just came on? Well, so you have to go. So I'm going to say that he's a former Browns player and a friend of my dad's.
That's fine. That's
there's what I would be able to say about him. And then I can also say that he is the brother of Angela Davis. Some of you probably know civil rights activist Angela Davis as well. And then he also has a sister, Mr. Davis, help me out.
Vanya Davis. Yeah.
Vanya Davis. And she's a pretty well-known lawyer. I know Angela Davis currently is a professor, but Mr. Ben Davis is lucky enough to be retired. We thank God for the blessings.
Yeah. Well, I put the time in, Lisa. So.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
And that's what we're going to talk about. So everyone that's joining us, we're tying in with our Black history. We're tying in with dealing with our trauma, and that's why I titled today is just looking at the journey. And from a biblical standpoint, when we look at the person I think of most about is a man named Abraham. And Abraham had to, God tells him to get out, go forward. And he tells him, I want you to go to a land. And he sends him to a different land. And I look at that as our journey in life, how we're going to go through some different changes and things that take place. And I'll touch on that a little bit in wrapping up. But I want to look a little bit at Mr. Davis's life and his journey. So, and I know you say I can call you Ben, and I'm going back and forth. And
I'm gonna call you Mr. Davis.
right. Well, I got permission to say Ben. No, but your friend Willie Hinton says hello, Ben, through Facebook. So I know you're not on Facebook. I want you to know.
Hello, Willie. Good to see you.
And Jeff said the USFL.
Yeah. USFL, exactly. Well, you know what happens to those that brain, especially when you play football, you lose a little few of those cells.
Well, look, I don't know what happened to mine because I didn't play football. Okay, so Ben, I want to start off, and I'm not going to start at the beginning. I want to start off with you, and I looked at that you graduated from high school early. And you played band in high school, right?
Yes.
In the band?
Yes. Yeah, I was in the band. Just to let you know, and I guess this is a good time to talk about it. I came from Birmingham, Alabama. Lisa, you know, he's from Bessemer. He's right across the bridge there in Bessemer, Alabama. And we're about the same age. And so he experienced a lot of the racism, the oppression that we all felt during that era. We had a police commissioner down there in Birmingham named Eugene Bull Connor. And Eugene Bull Connor,
infamous,
was the safety director that turned the hoses on the young kids that were protesting racism back in '63. So yeah, our background is such that you had to fight, you know, to struggle, and had to be so much better than your counterpart to get what you need to do. Now, at the same time, you're hampered or handcuffed with a school system, equipment. The teachers are great, but you were equipped with those things that were not given to the Black community, but to the white community, because you had two different school systems, and it certainly was not separate. We were separate, but we certainly weren't equal. So anyway, yeah, we had to struggle a lot to just get the things that we needed. Our parents did, and so yeah, life was kind of rough growing up in Birmingham in the 40s and 50s.
Right. Now I want to take a part of a quote I read from your sister Fanya, where she said the first few words that she was learning was colored and white, because you saw that on the separation, things like the colored fountain, the white fountain, the colored bathroom, the white bathroom, and so forth like that. And that's just dealing with like when because you were growing up in it, and I guess it was somewhat normal for you at that time. Did it feel like an oppression at that time? How did it feel with the separation when you were growing up?
Yeah, and I like to give thanks to my mother, my father, my church, my neighborhood, because we didn't miss it unless we had to go downtown. And when we went downtown, that's when we realized that white folks were trying to make us feel inferior to them, putting us in the back of the bus, sitting at different, couldn't sit at the counter at Woolworth, drinking from different fountains, one that said white, one that said colored. I mean, we didn't, I think it all started at home, and thanks to my mother and father, we had a foundation that we could be as good or better than anybody else, no matter what color it was. So we got along well. My mother tried to make fun of the fact that we had to sit on the bus, and the better seats were in the back, all kind of things like that.
Now, both your parents were school teachers too, right?
Yeah, my dad came up from the country. Episcopal Church was responsible for getting him up to Birmingham, and he went to school there in Birmingham. My mother was orphaned in Talladega County, and she came to Birmingham. They met. My dad was a World War II veteran, and they met there and got married. So, that's kind of how they were. And I'll tell you, they had the foresight, I think, just like they made themselves better, that generation, by coming out of my mother, for instance, she was from Cuyahoga, Alabama. And when young girls got up to 7th or 8th grade, they were supposed to go out to the field and start working in the fields. There was no more education for young girls at that age. And she left her foster parents and came to Birmingham with the help of the YWCA, and went to Parker High School, which was at that time was the largest colored school in the world, they said, and then went on to Miles College and went on to get a master's degree in early childhood development from NYU. So she was very, very active and wanted her kids to have the best education that they could get.
Right. Wonderful. Wonderful. Now, when I look at that too, your upbringing, there's an area that they call Dynamite Hill. So for people who aren't familiar with that, can you talk to us a little bit about Dynamite Hill?
Well, Dynamite Hill became famous because it was the location where there's Center Street on Dynamite Hill. And on Center Street, if you moved across the street to the white area, you would get bombed. Your house would be bombed. So there was Dynamite Bob, who would drop bombs, dynamite off at houses of blacks that had moved into the white section of Birmingham. It was a relatively middle class, if you want to see blacks as being middle class back then. But we had the scope of things. We had doctors, we had factory workers, we had teachers, we had lawyers, all in this one community in Smithfield, Dynamite Hill. And many times at night, my father would be out walking the neighborhood with the other men in the neighborhood, looking for Dynamite Bob or looking for someone dropping these dynamites. So we heard explosions. We heard explosions that would wake us up in the middle of the night, and we'd run out feeling that it's our house that got bombed. But it never did happen to our house. But I can hear the sounds now. They were so loud and just everything shook. So yeah, that was my first experience with violence as it relates to racism in Birmingham.
Mr. Davis, I'm interested in knowing, because Pastor Keogh's been talking a lot about trauma, this month.
Yes.
Do you think as a child you felt traumatized by that? And what made you guys stay? Like I feel like I would have been trying to pack my bags and move and everything. So if you can answer both, did you feel trauma, and what made you guys stay?
Well, what made us move was that we just left the projects and we thought we were moving on up. You know, we got a house. We left an apartment and got a house, and that was a big deal for us because we all needed room. There were 6 people in my family, and so we needed the room.
Right.
You know, we deserved to be there, so we weren't running away. And very few blacks in that neighborhood ran away and left that situation. So we didn't feel as though we should run. In fact, we had to face this oppression, this racism head on, and that's why we ended up, you know, with some of the liberties that we have had. Trauma. That's true. Yeah, I mean, you know, I can recall a Birmingham policeman calling me. Well, I was a young boy there. He held his gun up and told me I better get back on the porch board before I shoot you. I mean, that's after the police invaded the neighborhood. So there was trauma, but it was something I think that we were able to overcome once we knew what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, also, I think about too, you said there was, just when you and I talked, there was a gentleman there. I can't remember if he was in construction or so, but you guys were kind of.
Yeah, Mr. Gaillard had a construction company, and he had these trucks with walkie-talkies in them, and he mobilized all the men in the neighborhood to drive through the neighborhood sundown to sun up, and they would coordinate their locations over his CB radios. And so, so that's the kind of cooperation the whole neighborhood got to fight off this guy they called Dynamite Bob. Now, fast forwarding, if you remember the four girls that were bombed in Sunday school at 16th Street.
Yeah.
That's the same guy that was bombing the neighborhood. He's the one that set off the bombs that killed those girls. And they were friends of ours. They were friends of our families. My sisters lived in the neighborhood. Right. So Mr. Gaillard was very instrumental in almost conducting or performing a police force that we took care of.
Right. And at that point, because local law enforcement wasn't as proactive for your area, you guys had to do it yourself for the safety of your families, you know.
Well, the Ku Klux Klan consisted of a lot of policemen. So if you call the police, the Ku Klux Klan might show up. So we knew we couldn't get any protection from the Birmingham Police Department, and so we just had to struggle within ourselves. And fortunately, things worked out for us.
Now, at a certain time, though, your parents did send you guys away, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, which reminded me, Gil, about the. When I went to school, I was too small to play football. I graduated from high school at 15. I was very young, hadn't started to mature yet. So I played in the band. And my idols was Fess Hudson, Fess Watley. Those are the guys that they call them professor, but they were the musicians that taught us how to play. And the greatest thing was to show off, and Willie knows about this, how we would march down 4th Avenue. And we always, in a parade, always had something going on during the black neighborhood. And you learned a lot of things. You learned how to sew the ribbons on your pants. You learned how to iron your shirts. And I learned a little bit about music as well.
Okay. Yeah.
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Right. So I'm going to close out with a little bit of the football, but I want to get back to just a little more of the social stuff now. Because in the same article that I saw with your sister, Fanya, she said when she left after the 16th Street Baptist Church bombings, because she said she was friends, as you were saying, friends with some of the girls. She said when she left angry. At that moment, she was in this mode, this place of anger. Do you remember how you felt when you were leaving?
Well, let me tell you a little side story about Fanya. Everybody knows about Angela. Everybody knows about Angela, but Fanya is, radical as can be. I was in the National Guard. And Fanya was at home in Birmingham. I was in Fort Benning, Georgia. And And so I could drive home, and you know, after boot camp, you know, the guys were saying, "Man, come on, go home with me." And that was a white friend that I had, and he really desperately wanted to go home. He wanted to get out of Columbus, Georgia at the time. So reluctantly, I said, "Okay, come on, let's go." And when I got to the house, Fania was there. Fania she challenged him not to step into the house. I said, "Fania, what's wrong with you?" I mean, I don't like that. I don't want that. Well, I had to settle it down and talk to him, and he finally came in, and he stayed over the weekend with us. But I saw something in her that I didn't even know. I mean, she was adamant about not letting any white person at that time come in. And we had white friends back in Birmingham because there was a lot of interracial things going on in terms of the community, in terms of church. But at that point, she was at the phase that she did not want any white person stepping in her house.
Is Fania the youngest? Right. Is she the youngest, Mr. Davis?
I have a younger brother, Reggie.
Okay.
Yeah, she's younger than me. Fania is younger than me.
Okay.
So now, so if people are just joining on and catching us, or you don't know, so your one sister is Angela Davis, and I'll refer to her as a social justice activist, but she's also a professor. You know, has done many things. So I don't want to just so put her just in that box. Then your sister Fania is a civil rights attorney, but she also worked on restorative justice. Was it for Oakland?
Yeah, so what she did, restorative justice has been around a long time, but it didn't deal, I guess, with the racial issues. And so it's beginning now in the 70s and 80s to start to deal with racial issues. So she got very much involved in that and founded an organization in Oakland for Oakland youth. So and trying to keep the youth of Oakland from going to jail, she would try to pass some of this restorative justice ideology on, where you would, you know, you feel sorry for what you did, you give reparations to the person you did. But it was a stepping stone for her, and she really is still involved in that social justice, restorative justice area now.
Right.
No, I was just wondering, Mr. Davis, too. So we know about their work with, well, I will say Fania's work with restorative justice and Angela's work with really just being an activist. Did you feel that wasn't your place? Did you feel like, because I know moving into football, I'm not really sure if that was something that was even on your mind, or were you just trying to just try to move on and live your life? What were your thoughts about that kind of work yourself?
Well, I always kidded my folks that Angela was a special child. I mean, she went to Europe when she was in high school, and she had a great education too, a worldwide education. And I kid them that she got all the money while me and Reggie, we worked hard to give her the money to go. But
you said, hold on, did you say to give her the money to go?
Good brothers. Good brothers.
Yeah. So okay. Now, Angela just got back from, I think she was in Europe for a while, and a professor of hers went to San Diego to teach, and she was pursuing a doctor's degree in philosophy. Okay, and she arrived at San Diego. Now she wanted to get involved, so she went down in LA and started asking people, how can I get involved? And at that time, the Panthers was going on, Stop the War, the Vietnam War, that is. And there were a lot of things that's how she actively got involved with the Black community back in the 60s and 70s. Now, she was falsely accused of some capital offenses that if she was found guilty, I mean, she would be killed. At that time, they were executing people accused of found guilty of capital offenses. Well, anyway, she was always fighting for the victims of oppression. All of a sudden, now she's a victim of the state of California. So she went underground naturally, because she knew she couldn't get a fair trial from a J. Edgar Hoover, who was head of the FBI back then, and the Reagan and Nixon run California. So now I'm playing football with the Browns. I've established myself pretty good around that time. I had a knee injury though. So my in September in August of 1970 is when this event happened in Marin County, and this is when Angela went underground. I was coming back from a knee injury, trying to make the team at that time, and Angela was on the loose. FBI came by looking, interviewing me about me turning her in. Cleveland, anybody in Cleveland, on the east side of Cleveland, that had a natural and might have been light skinned was approached by the FBI, by the police, and interrogated, thinking they could be Angela coming to see her brother here. But it all turned out well. It all turned out well for me. I didn't play as soon as I thought I should play, but I did play later on in the 70 seasons and played 3 or 4 more years with Cleveland at the time. Yes, there was an overlap because my wife and I, Sylvia, we helped start a Free Angela Davis committee in Cleveland. And we had the OJs performed at Tri-C. As a matter of fact, we raised money for the legal defense fund for her. So yeah, we all were involved as a family. My mother spoke throughout the world. My sister Fania, she headed up the Free Angela Davis committee. And Reggie, who was still, my younger brother, who was still in college, he began to speak around the country. So yeah, we all were affected. And one of the most interesting things that I saw out of this whole thing was my parents lost a lot of friends in Birmingham, only because, you know, Angela, she was an avowed communist back then. She's no longer, but she was, and they, you know, just kind of disassociated themselves from my family. And so sometimes you don't know who your real friends are until you have to go through something, some adversity, to understand who they are.
Right. That's right.
Now I want you to just mention briefly how, well, not briefly, I want you to just mention how your mother was taking your sisters basically to Lazarus and what they were doing there, and then how your father was taking you, like kind of almost what started to carve out your guys' future.
Okay, well, in terms of, okay, mother and Angela and Fania, they would go downtown to Woolworth, and they would do the counter sit-in. They would do the picketing. They you know, back in the early 60s, late 50s, there was a lot of activity going on. And my brother and I, Reggie, my dad had a business, and we had to work, so we couldn't get off to go down and do the protest. And so we were working, and they were going downtown for the protest. So that's
right.
Kind of,
so yeah. When I was listening to that, I just kept thinking, as a young age, how your mother, she's bringing them along.
Right.
I mean, because I'm sure she didn't want to just leave them at home, but she's bringing them along, and they're seeing this at a young age and started shaping them, you know, to what they had to do. And like you saying too, your father's like, look, I got a job here that needs to get done. I need you two boys to come with me.
Yeah,
so, but
yeah, my mother, I mean, to understand her, she, you know, the Scottsboro boys. I don't know if you know that case. That was a case back in Alabama where nine men from the age of 12 to 20 were accused of raping 2 white women down in Scottsboro, Alabama. And this is one of the first trials, racial trials that got a lot of publicity. And she was very much involved in that protest to see that those young black men got a fair trial. So she was definitely committed. The churches, First Congregational Church, we would have interracial meetings with other churches in Birmingham, which is unheard of. I mean, you had to do it underground. You couldn't let it be publicized, so people knew that. So yeah, so my mother passed that along very strongly to my sisters and to us too. But our sisters were very much involved.
I'm just wondering, Mr. Davis, what happened with the boys?
Well,
they get fair trial. What happened?
Oh yeah. They did. They did get off. They got a fair trial. I mean, they did get off over time. They were exonerated for the charges. Obviously, it was trumped up charges, as we all see facing black folks, even more so black people. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So now I want to transition to football, because I want to see some of the things that you had to deal with. But I find it interesting, as you said too, you start off in the band and then you go to college and you're like, I guess I'll try out for the football team. You try out for the football team. Was that Defiance?
Well, yeah, but you know what happened? I went to a prep school in Maine. And they didn't have a band. They didn't have a band. In fact, there were only 98 students up there, and I was the only black student there. And there was no band. So my idea was to just go out for any activity that you had, because you could get off campus. I mean, we were secluded in the hills of Maine with lakes and woods and so forth, but I got a chance to ride around. But what happened there was I started to play football. I didn't play well. I wasn't on the starting team. I wasn't even on the traveling team with the varsity. The JV would travel, but I started playing. My coach there, I asked him if I went to this college, Defiance College, which was a small school, would I be able to play football for that team? He said, yeah, you're good enough. By your senior year, you should be a starter on the team. And that was motivation for me to go out for football at this college, Defiance College, which is in northwestern Ohio. And we had a serious program there. We had a guy come in from OU, Kirk Mee, and man, he was he was on it. And I learned a lot of football. I learned a lot of technique. We played in a conference that wasn't anywhere near where Ohio State or Alabama. I mean, we were in NAIA, which is a small division school. And my senior year, we went undefeated. So now it's time for the draft. And the Browns saw that I had some speed. And in fact, another story, a teammate of mine was on my track team, and he went back, told his father that there's a kid up there at Defiance that's really, really fast. Well, he lived next to Bob Nussbaumer, who was a Brown scout and a coach. And so he told the personnel directors, and so they drafted me, but they drafted me in the 17th round, which was the last round. There were like 430 people drafted before me. Right. So I was thankful for the opportunity. I had a job that I can go to teaching school down in Cincinnati. And so I said, I'm gonna give it all at this camp, this Browns camp. And if it doesn't work out, that's so it may be, I'll go on and teach school. Well, I got there, and 17th round draft choice. They don't even consider you as part of the team. Go get the helmet for me, bring me water, that kind of stuff. So I got the coach's eye, and Blandon Collier, my coach, he says, it looked like you're going to make this team, young man, but you're not going to make it as a wide receiver. We got Paul Warfield, we got Gary Collins, we got Cliff McNeil. Right. You won't make it as a wide receiver, so we're going to switch you to defensive back. So I was switched from a running back in college to a defensive back with the Browns, and I earned my keep, as you might say, by running back punts. Yes. Yeah, I led the NFL in punt returns that rookie year, and I tell you, I went home the year prior to reporting.
Is that me or is that him? I think there you go.
He said, man, in order for you to make this team plan punt return, you got to know how to catch the ball. And he would say, you come down here to the high school, I'm going to catch 50 punts. I'm going to kick 50 punts with my left foot, 50 punts with my right foot. And I want you to catch them all. And so I was so prepared for catching a punt in Cleveland Municipal Stadium. Now, you don't know what it's like to catch a punt at Cleveland Municipal Stadium. You're right on the lake. The ball goes up. The wind from the lake takes it. It moves over here. Oh, yeah. It comes down in the stadium. Then it moves back over here. So you had to have a lot of confidence to catch the ball. And that's what he gave me. So the rest is history. I ended up playing 10 years in the NFL. I played 7 with Cleveland and 3 with the Detroit Lions. And, I feel
now, 1968, you led the Browns with you had 8 interceptions.
Well, you've done your work. Yeah, yeah.
So that switch paid off for you.
It did. And not only did the switch pay off, but I had a guy named Erich Barnes who was on the left corner. Now, Erich had 6 or 7 years into the league by the time I'm playing. So don't you know, every quarterback that we went up against started throwing to my side. So I would end the game up, And I would look at Eris, his uniform would be clean, and mine would have dirt all over. I said, man, you didn't give me your check. You don't deserve a check from me.
Okay, so now, Ben, as you had those wonderful years in the NFL, when you were in there during this time, were you dealing with some of the racial issues in the football industry? And just to be plain about it, like I know at one time, they looked and said, well, a black person is not smart enough to be a quarterback. So, you can only have certain positions and so forth like that. Did you see any of that when you were in the league?
Well, I did. And the basis of this whole thing, I think, this whole racist attitude, especially with positions playing on the field, was the fact that they would give you an intelligence test. They would give you a test when you got there, and you had to score so much. So had to score a certain point in order to play a certain position. Now, linebackers, especially middle linebackers, centers, free safeties, those were kind of the do not touch positions for black folks back when I was playing. And they were saying that we aren't smart enough. So the center, he starts the game, so I guess he has to be white. The quarterback is the leader in the team. I mean, he's the face of the team. Everybody relates to the quarterback, so he has to be white. The middle linebacker is the quarterback of the defense. He's calling the plays, and he's got to be, a model for the team too. So I mean, we saw it, and not only on the field, but you were limited. Teams limited themselves to the number of black players that they were allowed to be on a team. In 67 or 68, I think the most we ever had was 8 or 10 black players. And
so it was like a quota, an actual quota.
That's right, Lisa. Yeah.
Well, was that was unofficial though, right?
Well, it was unofficial. Yeah, it was unofficial. Yeah. And I mean, it wasn't written, just like a lot of these things in deed restrictions are not written, but the real estate people know how to implement them. But and they would always go twos because they would want you to room with another black player. So football has come a long way in terms of the way it was back in the late 60s when I played.
All right, so now I'm going to ask you this. So now, like today, the athletes are well. Let me speak to the IQ test. So they for some of you that don't know, they still do. Well, I don't know if they stopped it recently, but they were still doing the IQ test. Yeah. And they were showing how, like, I think ESPN did a thing on, and they were showing how some people did horrible on it, but they were great players. So it's still kind of hard to gauge. There were some quarterbacks that scored really bad, but they were good on the field. And that was the tough thing about the IQ, that just because you didn't pass that doesn't mean it didn't translate to football that you could play.
Well, so. Yeah, and Pastor, I'll tell you, there are a lot of us. I'm one of them that didn't score well on tests. I mean, I just didn't do well on tests. I could do the work, but you sit me down to a test where everybody's quiet and you got to sit there. I mean, it's just not everybody, at least from my point of view, will not do well on tests. And so how can you limit someone from playing based on a test? Right.
All right. So last thing is, so when you play, like I'm wondering, and I kind of know the answer to it, but I know like today they're signing $80 million contracts. Herschel Walker, who I brought up earlier, he's worth $12 million. He was one time the highest paid running back. Now back then it was $5 million. And now that's a lot for me, but that's not a lot today. Did you ever get that $80 million contract?
In my dreams, I got some in my dreams. No. I guess I'd like to say that, when I was playing during my era, my teammates' era during the late 60s, early 70s, that was the beginning of the explosion of professional football. I mean, just think what happened. In 70, the NFL and the AFL combined, so it became one league at that point. We started playing Monday Night Football. and then you see it's exploded into Thursday night football, sometimes on Saturday. So when I played, it was just one game on Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock. Now we did play the Pittsburgh Steelers though on a Saturday night back in the 60s. But other than that, football was reserved for 1 o'clock, and the pastors knew they had to get their parishioners out of there so they can make it downtown to the game before the kickoff started.
Jeff Coiner would appreciate that.
So,
may I ask Mr. Davis before? I know my husband said last question. Hopefully he doesn't mind. I'm just wondering, we bring this all full circle. I'm just really wondering what your, from what you have witnessed in the past to today, what do you feel about our progress or lack thereof in our society?
Oh, yeah, it was the Wonderlic test. That was
boy, I mean, there's a lot you can go with that question, Lisa. I mean, if you take a look at our country now, we have been divided. We have been divided almost 50-50 for a number of years because, we can't settle on a president that all of us really likes. One half likes one half likes the other. What is happening now is something that I haven't seen since segregation, where even we don't see the signs there, the physical signs, but we hear it. We see people are taking sides. We're seeing the Confederate flag now more than we saw it back in the 50s and 60s almost. So, I mean, I feel for my grandkids because they got to grow up in this world. And I'm hoping to just be somebody that will be able to let us get all together, at least majority, and go in the same direction. I mean, right. It's been difficult. And you saw what happened at the Capitol on January 6th. I mean, that's unheard of.
The insurrection.
Yeah, that's unheard of to see people going into the Capitol, tearing down buildings and shooting and killing people. So, I mean, it's tough. It's tough to deal with, and I think you got to have a strong faith to keep to be optimistic about the results changing.
Yeah. Major testament to your family, to your mom and dad for raising you all so well, and the success that all of you were able to accomplish through that foundation. It truly is a testament to the fact that we really need to make sure that our families are solid and secure, and that we prepare our children.
Yeah, that's very well said, Lisa. I mean, that when you come out the house, you got to be ready. You got to be prepared from in the house, and you get outside of the house, and you can deal with most issues. So,
absolutely,
very well said.
Absolutely,
right. So we thank you, and we didn't even get into, but I just mentioned briefly that even outside of football, you've owned cable company, you've owned radio station, you had supplies business and so forth with copies and all that. So you continued on with other ventures as well. It looks like you made the most of everything that you could that was at your exposure. So we thank you for sharing this time with us. We thank you
honored
what you've done and your family through the years. We appreciate you. And thank you for sharing your time and your story with us, Ben.
Thank you, Pastor
Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis.
You make me feel old when you say Mr. Davis.
No, sorry. I don't mean to make you feel old. It's reverence and respect, sir. That's all it is.
Well, I've had a wonderful time too. Just chatting with you. It's been great. It's been fantastic.
And tell me again, real quick, East Cleveland. What was the name of the East Cleveland Cable Company?
TBA. It was called TBA.
TBA. So if anybody had TBA East Cleveland, Ben Davis was part of that ownership of that. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. All right. So when you come back to Cleveland, we know you come back. When you come back to Cleveland, we'll either see you on the golf course or at church. We'll have to catch you on one of them. All right.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Mr. Davis, thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. God bless.
Thank you.
All right. So that was wonderful. Now, I feel like I just want to give some scripture, because I don't have Bible study without,
without the Bible.
Right. But I want to get some scripture, and then we're going to close out. I know, Lila, you don't have to drive home. So if we were at Bible study, you would have to drive home if we were at the church. But I want to give you Genesis chapter 12. This is what I was talking about with Abraham. The Lord said unto Abraham, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee. So God tells him, leave your country, leave your friends, leave your father, leave your comfort, leave your routine. And then he says, I'll make thee a great nation. I will bless thee. I'll make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. So scripturally, when we look at this, God said, I need you to go to another land. I need you to trust me. Trust that I'm going to lead you. Trust that I'm going to provide for you. And even when we look at this and God sends him out, Abraham even has to fight battles that are not his own, because Lot gets captured by the 4 kings that came and took Sodom and Gomorrah.
Come on, preacher. I love how you make that transition. We just talked about racism, trauma, and football. And look at you. Come on, preacher.
This is the journey of life. And when we look at this, so Lot's kidnapped. Abraham has to go and rescue him and his stuff and bring him back. And then I want to close with the scripture in Isaiah. What is it? I think it's, I do have this. Isaiah 30 and 21. That's what it is. Isaiah 30 and 21. And thine ears shall hear a word behind thee, saying, this is the way, walk ye in it, when you turn to the right hand and when you turn to the left hand. And what I think about with that is God is saying, because, we want to know, well, what's the outcome? Or what am I about to get in? We would almost rather God give us all the details. And God said, no, just keep your ears open. When I say go to the right, go to the right. When I tell you go this way, walk ye in it and do that. And this is a part of our journey of life. And when we look at, like I said, Black history, when we look at Ben Davis' life and so forth, how he was on Dynamite Hill, dealing with the Ku Klux Klan, dealing with bombs going off and all those things, and having to deal with trauma. This is a journey. And he ended up playing football. He ended up owning businesses and doing that. He was able to survive the trauma, and I want to say outlive it, And in our lives, we're going to have a journey, and we're going to have to fight battles. And some battles may not even be our own battles, but we're going to have to fight battles. And I like that, because even looking at his sisters, Angela and Vanya, looking at fighting for justice for other people.
Yeah.
So, sometimes we have to fight battles that are not our own, and we have to deal with, it's easier to stay away. Like, I don't want to get involved in that. But we may have to get into that trauma and deal with it to help other people overcome it and get out of it.
But we get out of it if we are able to have that foundation. And I think that was probably my biggest takeaway from him, that foundation of family and faith that he had. Right. And I think that's going to be the same thing that is needed for us. I know that's the same thing that's needed for us. When you have a foundation in God, you can go through things differently. Not saying you're not going to go through,
right?
But you're going to go through differently. You're going to be a lot more resilient, because your hope is built in nothing less than God. And so I think that's really key.
Amen. All right, so that's what we have for Bible study. We thank you all for joining us.
Amen.
Once again, we thank Ben Davis for being here with us. It was a blessing having him. We appreciate you.
Yes.
And to all of you that are joining out there, we want to encourage you about trauma. It's real, but you can overcome it. You can make it out of it and so forth. And we want you to do that as well. Want to continue to remind you, as we have had the hotlines and things that you can call. We put that on the screen. And we want you to know it's in the description as well. So please share this with somebody so they can be blessed as well. And next week, we're going to look at talking about healing. We talked about forgiveness. We're going to look at healing out of the trauma as well. So that's all we have for this evening. You make it a safe evening. Continue to pray for one another. Look out for one another. Let's remember our seniors. Let's remember those battling COVID. Let's remember Texas, who's dealing with those effects from the weather, outages, and all those things. We need to support and help one another. No man or woman makes it alone. Amen. God bless you.